we have been using the Alveary curriculum, which is a Charlotte Mason curriculum for the school year. So we've completed one in like a quarter terms. So we still have, another 1 3/4 terms to go. But I wanted to give you like progress updates, what I'm liking about it, what I'm not liking about it. Completely, unbiased review, I guess. Is it biased? I don't know. I'm just going to share with you how it's gone for us. Now, I just finished giving a tour of our homeschool room with all of the details of all the in and outs of every single nook and cranny of the space and all of the systems that we use and why and how that it's going into the Soaring Mothers Toolkit. So that has not launched yet, but I'm getting closer. I've been working a lot on this project, helping you get the resources that you need when you're in survival mode and reentry and normalizing and exploring and thriving, as well as Family Systems Playbook. So it is the place where I'm putting all of my systems for our entire family and all of the resources that I use, just really easy and accessible. Everything is going in there. And so if you want access to that and be the first to know when it comes out, you can go to thrivingandmotherhoodpodcast.com/toolkit and sign up for the waitlist so that you will be the first to know. Those of you on the waitlist will get an extra special price bonus on when it's released ahead of time. And so let's jump into the Alveary.
Hi, I'm Jessica Jackson, and this is the new way to thrive in motherhood by leaning into who you are, what you love, your unique family situation, and personal mission to create a life that you actually want to live. I want to invite you to join me in saying no to the life of the exhausted supermom, burnout, victim thinking, being pulled in so many directions, suffering through survival mode, or being lost in motherhood, and say yes to building strong families and moving forward on our greatest goals in order to create a fulfilling life that we are excited to wake up to each day and become a soaring mother. This is the Thriving in Motherhood podcast.
Okay, so first of all, one of the things that I really like about the Alveary is that it takes the principles of Charlotte Mason and has continued to allow time to go on and bring it into our current time period. So most other Charlotte Mason curriculums that you look at, and we've done a lot of them, I've used resources from a lot of them, I appreciate them, they have stayed in the past. So a lot of the books are from like the 1900s. And they have not moved things forward. And the way that she was teaching math that was cutting edge at that time, they're still teaching math that way. And there's nothing wrong with that per se, but there's just a lot of learning that's happened in the last 100 years since Charlotte Mason was teaching school in the British Isles in the early in the 1900s. And it just is a little contradictory to be stuck with the old books, although there's fantastic old books. I'm not saying to be do away with all of them, but she just was so like pushing the envelope on science and math and literature and all of the things. And so the Alveary really has taken the spirit of that, and a lot of the books that we read, and all of them for science for sure, but literature and all of these books are new. They've been published recently, and their team is reading and curating wonderful, wonderful books to be part of our curriculum. So that I absolutely love. I appreciate that from a philosophy standpoint. But it's also exposed us to just some incredible books. So while there is, yes, we're still reading classics of, myths and fairy tales and fables and, classic literature, we're absolutely still reading those. And we're still getting the best of the new stuff that's out there as well, or at least really great new stuff. So I love that fundamentally. We've been exposed to incredible books, and I bought a lot of them, and then I started using the library because it just costs started adding up, and my kids are like, please buy this book. I will read it over and over and over again. So even the ones that I didn't buy, my kids want me to buy. They want to read them themselves again and again. So yeah, that's been great. So as far as content goes, it's awesome. Now, I guess backing up a little bit to help give an overview of how this works, they give you a book list. So when you purchase the Alveary, as a whole, it's a membership, and you get access to from, pre-learning, like preschool, early years, all the way to 12th grade across all of the subjects. Now, I don't have a list of them here, but it includes things like architecture and art and reading and literature and math, but then it also has all of these other Charlotte Mason subjects. We've got Shakespeare and folk songs and folk dancing and composer study and artist study, and they break it down like science. It's like you have nature study and you have natural history, and then you have like your hard sciences, and then a day of labs. And so anyway, there's just a lot of diversity within first of all, the content in the books, they've been very good about including perspectives around all over the world, but then also within the subjects. And so you're not really doing the same thing. Like every day is different, how we've structured it, because there's different things happening every day. So while we do our core subjects every day, my kids do math every day and they write every day and they do their reading lessons or their spelling lessons, like that stays the same. But then there's so much variety with that. They also have Spanish and French and Latin. So the languages are built in. There's art and handicrafts also built in. And the thing that I love about those is there's also video lessons. So I don't have to be the one to teach those. Or at least have something to reference, someone teaching me and then I teach my kids. So either way, there is instruction there. It's not just read a book and figure it out. They teach you those things. And along with that, there's lots of parental support. So there's office hours pretty much every week and recording of all the office hours from the past. So there's a wealth of teacher instruction, which is actually what really drew me to the Alveary, was just being able to improve myself as a teacher and an educator for my kids. With also, but also elevating, like I knew there's areas that we were weak in our homeschooling. There's things we do really well and there's things we don't do as well. And so I wanted to really dive in this year and strengthen some of those weaknesses and get resources for some of those resources. And just some direct instruction for myself on how to teach those things better. And I will say, this is something that you very much grow into. So I'll save that for my cons, but okay. So I love that. I really appreciate the teacher instruction. It's very, very helpful. I love the variety that we have in our days. Now, another aspect, this costs more. So we added the Syllabird add-on, which is a homeschool planning program. And so, but the Alveary is synced up with it. So what you can do, okay, I'll save this for my con, but what you can do is just go click, okay, I want these grades, these classes in these grades, and I want to teach it, I want to cover these on which days of the week. And then your entire lesson plan for the entire year is just put into the calendar. So all I do is click on Monday and history, and it says, read these pages and here are these resources and watch this video or composer study. And that was another thing that I love. So you have it in Syllabird and then everything's hyperlinked. And the Alveary, not only did they choose amazing literature, one thing we have not done a lot of is adding in like YouTube videos or songs or I know like multimedia type stuff. And they have chosen and selected and included within their lesson plans absolutely phenomenal resources. So I was never one to watch YouTube videos with my kids, but they have curated some incredible things. So we watched like how Venice was constructed with all of these 3D models. It was fascinating. Like it really came alive after reading all of these books. So we read about Venice and we read about the history and we read about Vikings or we read about these things, but then they have like a video tour of an actual Viking ship at a museum with someone speaking the language there and it's being translated. It just makes the thing come alive so much more. And they're not super long. But it's just enough to really round out what we read that day. A composer study. We have had, like, for the cost, the value that we have given and gained and the joy that we've experienced as a family, just doing composer study this year alone has been so high. So high. It has been incredible. The quality of the music that they've picked, the videos, my kids, we watch them over and over and over again. We listen to them. We have dance parties to them. And this year we're doing, like, Renaissance and medieval music to fit with the time period, because the Alveary that is broken into 4 time periods. It's a very Charlotte Mason way of doing education, but so is classical education. You do history rotation. And the way that they do it is they a lot of the subjects fit that historical time period. So including the music. And so my kids are just falling in love with Mongolian throat singing and sitars from India and the hurdy-gurdy. So it's like not only is it the time period, but they do really good at getting music from lots of cultures and parts of the world, and it's just come alive. So that I absolutely love. It's been incredible. Okay, so overall, I have really loved our experience with the Alveary, but I'm going to share with you some of the cons or some of the challenges that I've had, because there's those too. So first of all is the price. It is not inexpensive. So, I mean, on one hand, it is great. So you buy a digital access to all of the curriculum, which means you get a book list, you get supply lists, you get these lesson plans. Now, you can print them out and access them for that price, or you can get an additional I think it's like another $100 to do Syllabird, where it breaks it up for you digitally. Now, I spent a lot of time this summer without using Syllabird, trying to just like plan everything out and figure out, I don't know, like even printing things out. And it cost so much to print the paper, that it became kind of a wash of whether we went digital with Syllabird or whether I printed out all these lesson plans. Now, there's some lesson plans that I realized it has to be paper. Like a lot of the outdoor work and the nature study and all of the PE stuff. There's different PE things every single day. And having my phone out for those is just not great. Like I don't love having my phone out or a computer out or a device out, and doing it outside is like absolutely no go. So I did print out like super teeny tiny on half size paper and flipped on both sides, some of those lesson plans so that they're easier to access. But that's been something where I'm like, okay, why are we not getting to this thing? Oh, it's too hard to access online. Okay, I'm going to print those out. So first of all, just that, like, it's expensive to print stuff out. It's expensive to have the online version. You have the subscription, and then you're also buying books and supplies. So the first year you do Alveary, you're buying everything because you don't have all the stuff. Next year, doing this again, we will have like all of the foundation things. We have the atlas, we have the chalk, we have, I don't know, there's just like a lot of foundational stuff you use from year to year. So we won't be repurchasing all of that stuff, and it would just be the books for that year, which would decrease the cost, but there's still an investment there. And with that, I've discovered like, well, all-in-one's pretty cool. I've never done an all-in-one solution before. I actually really have loved lots and lots of resources. There's so many amazing, wonderful things out there in homeschooling. So like I have a science curriculum that I absolutely love to use. I love how he wrote the book. I love everything about it. And I like it even better than what we've done with the Alveary for our family. We love doing the science together. And so, and yet we're kind of like slogging through with the Alveary this year. I'm like, I'm just going to give it a full solid go. And yet, there's another option, right? And so I think like just that, okay, I've already spent this much money on this thing. And though I love this thing, I still love using other resources. And so then it becomes a little bit of like, I don't know, like how much, what makes sense. Now, one of the thoughts I have had is that you can buy, instead of buying this whole membership, you can buy just individual classes from the Alveary, like specific subjects. And so that might be something I consider doing next year. I honestly don't know what I'm going to do next year. So full transparency, I don't know, which means there's some really great things, right? So there are things that makes me think very seriously about doing again. And then there's these other things that I'm going to keep sharing with you. Okay. So one is cost. Cost of the membership's not so bad. Membership's very reasonable, but then you add in the books and you add supplies, and just the cost of printing. There's just lots of hidden costs, I felt like. Okay. Other cons. I feel like the pacing is taking us a really long time to figure out. So some books you get and you read the book over the course of like 2 years in the early years, like this geography book. And then you're doing lots of supplemental thing. Like you read a little bit and then you do all these activities with it. And so like doing the activity part is really hard for us. Reading the books, no problem. We have that down pat. We love reading the books. And some of the books, my kids are like, I will not read it at that pace, Mom. Like we must read it faster. It's too good. So the literature books, they're spread over 12 weeks. No, we do them in like a week, and we do them as family read-alouds. We all get totally sucked in, and we love them, and we don't want us to go slowly. And so for us, like trying to figure out, and it's just a process, like, and I would say this is the other thing, like this is, in some ways it's open and go, right? Everything's planned out for you. There's a lot of other things like the CMEC, you have to plan it all out yourself. Or even Ambleside Online, they kind of give you a plan, but they don't rough things out for you. There's not extra resources. There's not specific, oh, hey, do this with this lesson, right? Alveary gives you all that. There is do this with this lesson. There's, oh, here's this extra resource to go with this chapter. Oh, here's a activity to do. They give that all to you. And yet as the teacher, it just takes a long time to wrap your brain around, at least for me, what's happening in all the different subjects. Like catching a vision and the learning objective and all the different subjects is taking me a while. And so for a while, I've just been doing open and go. And then we get to, there's like 11 weeks of lessons, and then the 12th week is an exam week. And I realized like we got to geography and realized, oh, okay, like they just needed to memorize these things in the map. And yes, you're reading and there's all these wonderful literature stuff, but like the objective was really to memorize the European map. And I just didn't have that in my head, and I didn't really push it with the kids, but we just didn't know where we were going. It felt a little bit aimless, and that was on me. And so I feel like as I keep going with it, I get more and more excited because I'm catching the vision of what each subject is, what the objectives are, really understanding, I don't know, like where to focus my time and energy. But it is something, I've been doing it for like we've been acting, a while, like a long time, like 6 months, I've had access to this curriculum, and we've been doing it for about, I don't know, 3.5 actively with school. We do less school in the fall because the weather's good. We've got gardening happening. We've got all of our birthdays in the fall, and we do a lot more school in the summer when it's hot here in Georgia. Anyway, so curriculum wise, things are a little bit bumped for us, but, yeah, so just like, on one hand, it's totally open go. It's more prepared than any other Charlotte Mason curriculum, and as much as any other open then go box curriculum that you would have. And also it takes a while to wrap your mind around it. So that is a challenge. Figuring out the pacing of what works for your family, a little bit of a challenge. Now they do highly encourage you to have, to do as much family subjects as you can or you want or you need to, but it's also laid out so it can be as individual as you want or you need it to. Our family loves doing things together. I know other friends that are, another friend of mine uses the Alveary, and they love doing things separate. All their kids love just being in their own space, doing their own thing. So there's best of both worlds. If I were thinking about just doing the early years, I feel really confident with what we did with the early years. And I don't know that I would, okay, as I've thought through this, like part of me wishes I had this from the very beginning with my kindergarten first grader, because it would have given me time to grow into this entire thing. And there's people that have been using the Alveary for 10, 11 years since it started. And it's really fun and rich for them because they have grown into it both as a teacher and both as a family, and they've just slowly added things to it. So if you think long term, I would if money were no object, or at least a comfortable object, I would not have any qualms about investing in a long-term Alveary education, as far as the quality of it, the breadth and the depth that you find there, and the ability to grow into it. At the same time, I feel like what we did in the early years was totally fine, and that there's so many resources for the early years that it's totally fine that we didn't spend our money in that way. Because I was able to, there's just so many things, like using Simply Charlotte Mason's picture study packets and some of their composer things, or even just being intentional and picking like, hey, Beethoven sounds really fun. Or there's a lot of podcasts that we've listened to. A friend, let's see, forget what it's called, but it's like it's through NPR, and for 4 weeks. Oh, Classical Kids or something like that. Classics for Kids, that's what it's called. We've used the Classics for Kids podcast, which is free, and you just listen to, every week. You've got for 4 weeks, they have a composer, and we study the composer that way. So there's just so many wonderful free and current up-to-date resources, or less expensive, like with Charlotte Mason packets, the Simply Charlotte Mason packets, that I feel like we were really able to, just maximize both choice and follow our interests at that time while still giving ourselves a really broad education. Now, what really drew me to the Alveary is that I have a child that's getting older. So while that worked really well in the early years, I could just tell as we hit 10, 11 years old, like, ooh, there needs to be a little bit more there. And me trying to figure out what that looks like was a bit more challenging for me. And so the Alveary has been good because I can see like, okay, we are not actually hitting some of these markers yet. Like there's areas where I can keep raising the expectation and the support and, improving our environment so that we're able to improve the quality of the education in our home that our kids are getting. And yes, academically, but also just in this wide variety of other skills and exposure to things. So that is really, that's really what drew me to it in the first place, is just wanting to give my older kids a little bit more than what I was giving them, because I really did feel confident in what I was doing in those early years. And I wouldn't say that I'm less confident. I just wanted more resources, right? And I found this. And that reason alone, like, again, it's a growing process. We are improving. Like both they need to grow in their skill set. I need to grow in my skill set. We need to get the right resources. We need to get the right environment set up. We need to make it easy to do the things they want to do. I need to, have the clear vision and help cast that vision and help get them arise to the vision. So there's just many steps to it. So if you if you're looking at it, if you're considering it, know that this is very much something you're growing into. And the Alveary even recommends that. Like if you're new, they have a bunch of beginner track options. They have a beginner track schedule where you're only doing, a portion of the subjects. Like they even say like you're going to need to grow into this, and we're going to need to grow into it. So I feel like we're making lots of improvements. And I at first I was a little bit discouraged, hitting term 2, and I'm like, oh, there's all these things we haven't figured out yet. And then I realized, wait a minute, we're in term 2 and there's so much that we have, and there's so much more that we're going to. We're just going to have to keep smoothing it out. So that is probably a long, maybe more than you wanted, but thorough thoughts, analysis of the Alveary for Oh, one other con actually. Everything is done around a history cycle, which is on one hand super duper cool, but you only have access to that history cycle. So if you are, have already studied that part of history, or you're way ahead, or you want to do something else, like you're locked in based on that historical rotation. And so what I ended up doing is we hadn't covered modern history, so I got Story of the World, which again, I love. Here's the thing. I love Story of the World. I love the additional resources and the activities. And so like I said, there's just so many great resources out there that is a hard thing for me about an all-in-one curriculum, is that I do love other resources and we still keep pulling those in. So having said that, I ended up getting the 4th audiobook and actually we ended up getting everything with Story of the World. We have the audiobook, we have the physical copy of the book, and we have the activity book because my kids love it and you love using them in different ways. So we just listened to the 4th modern history thing over the summer to or at least expose them to all of that, because we hadn't really gotten there yet. We'd done all the other time periods. So that with the Alveary starting at the very beginning of their history cycle again this year, we would be able to jump back into that. So that's kind of how I dealt with it. But if you're jumping in for a year and you're not sure what your long-term plan is, that history cycle thing could throw you off. So or you just jump in and embrace it for what it is, and it's great too. So then I would say that is another reason why I'm thinking of staying. It's we're starting here at this cycle, so it would be kind of cool to go through at least a 4-year cycle, through all of them, and just glean from all of those periods. So I don't know. I'm still on the fence, but you can purchase and get access to the program starting February 1st for the 2025-2026 school year. I do have an affiliate code which gives you a discount if you are interested. I'm not saying you should, but if you're interested in it and you want to get a discount, you can access that for a little bit less. And you can access it sooner. Now, the nice thing about accessing it sooner is that you don't have all the lesson plans yet, but it allows you as the mom to start planning. I did the bulk of my planning in July because we were still doing stuff already. So if you're like, ooh, I have time in February, March, April to dive into the mother resources, if I want to listen back, listen to the previous year, they have so many teaching resources for you. So if you really want to dive into those, or you want to become part of the community, because they've got a really great active community. Anytime I ask a question, within 24 hours, at least one, if not multiple people have responded. So there is lots of support within the Alveary community as well. So that is really great. So if you want a long runway and prep for yourself, enrolling in February makes a lot of sense. If you're already maxed out with your stuff, you don't even get access to lesson plans, I want to say, until June or July. And so for me, it might be earlier than that actually. Maybe it's a little bit earlier, but I don't know that you get lesson plan access right at February. I think it's a little bit later. And so there's not necessarily a huge rush. I'm not deciding yet what we're doing yet specifically. So anyway, hope that helps, gives you an overview, gives you something to think about for those of you that are homeschooling. And I hope you have a great week, and I will talk to you next week.
Where you are planted, watch the blossoms grow.